Good morning and welcome to our daily devotional from Pilgrim Congregational Church. I'm Patrick Horn. Very glad to have you with us on this Tuesday, February the 22nd, 2022. And we're beginning a new passage this week, which is Luke chapter 9, verses 28 through 36. And I'm going to read the entire passage and offer a few general reflections as we study the passage this week of the Transfiguration. This coming Sunday is Transfiguration Sunday, and the passage is from Luke chapter 9. So this is Luke 9, verses 28 through 36. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. Well, this is, of course, the Transfiguration scene from Luke chapter 9, and in this scene and in this passage, we have a rich array of various meanings and significances for our understanding, not only of Christ, but of ourselves. And there are 6 basic elements in the story, following almost each verse. But I want to list those out so that we can appreciate them both separately and all together in this passage from Luke chapter 9. The first element of the story is that Jesus withdraws to the mountain to pray with 3 of his, presumably his closest disciples. These are the disciples, Peter, James, and John, that are most mentioned in the Gospels. They were his closest disciples, his closest friends. And the first point made in this passage is that he withdraws to the mountain to pray with them. There are all kinds of meaning and significance one could draw from that. The second element of the story is the Transfiguration itself, and we're not given a whole lot of information about it. In fact, we're not given really anything except a description. We're told that it is in this passage, we're told that it occurred while he was praying. His face changed, the appearance of his face changed, and it doesn't say exactly in Luke what that means, how his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. So it's the transfiguration itself, which is very much a mysterious occurrence, but certainly has something to do with Jesus' relationship to God and relationship with the divine. Then the third element is the appearances of Moses and Elijah together, who are talking with Jesus. And in the story, the sense that you get is that they simply appeared out of nowhere, that they were not there, and then suddenly they were there, and Jesus is talking with them. And so that's the third element, the appearance of Moses and Elijah. Then we have the fourth element is Peter's response, which I think is best interpreted as an awkward one. That is one you can imagine anyone like myself who is trying to understand, and usually understands things while talking out loud, sounds confused and awkward. And Peter certainly sounds a bit confused and awkward in his response. The fifth element is the voice from the cloud. And there are several interesting things about this as well. The implication, of course, is that this is God the Father speaking, but it doesn't say that. It just says a voice came from the cloud. And the voice was very clear, apparently, to all the men gathered there, and that it said, "This is my son, my chosen, listen to him." And then finally, we have the disciples' response in the last verse of this passage, verse 36. And the response was that the disciples remained silent. And that's a fairly consistent theme in the Gospel of Mark, but doesn't appear too often in the Gospel of Luke. And this passage being one of the exceptions, that is an emphasis on silence and not talking about what they had seen or heard. So this is a very rich passage with lots of different meanings and different ways that we might want to think and reflect upon. So we'll cover some of those this week, and I hope you'll reflect on some of these elements of this passage as you continue your week. Let's close with this word of prayer from W.E. Orchard. O God, who dwellest in light unapproachable and full of glory, why dwell we in darkness and in the shadow of death? The shadows of night, which so quickly veil the glory of the day, are not so heavy as those that rest upon our hearts. We are here for a moment, like a bird that flashes from the darkness through the light, back to darkness once again. And even here, as we pause a while, the shadows creep upon us. They rest upon those we love. They rest upon those into whose eyes we look. They rest upon ourselves. We cannot understand the brevity of life. We are just learning how to work, just catching some glimpse of its meaning. A sudden call and we are gone. We cannot understand why such pain of body, heart, and mind should sadden each day. We cannot understand why we should bring upon ourselves such misery, make such tragic failures of our life, or suffer such eternal loss. Is it, O Father, that we see these shadows because the day spring from on high has visited us, that these pains are the feelings of those who wake from the stupor of death, that the darkness broods upon our hearts because we've turned our backs to thee and hidden ourselves from thy light? Give us the grace, the daring, the desire to turn again, that we may see thy face. Amen. Thank you for joining me this morning from Pilgrim Congregational Church. I'm Patrick Horn. I hope you have a very good day. Goodbye.